All right, everybody, welcome back to the best hour of their day. Today is a little bit of an intervention because we are going to talk about the fact that Jay is mentally unstable.
This is, I've been waiting.
And
Yeah.
he spends way too much time on his devices.
I knew letting you guys record an episode without me was going to lead to you realizing how unstable I was.
Yeah, it was very, very apparent right from the get-go, from the second I hit record. No, but we were just chatting before this, and well, it's just like, let's just talk about it. But today, I thought it was cool because we were talking about, we just basically lined up a couple different topics, but mental health for the box owner. Particularly now, I think it's important because as a gym owner, you are the leader of your tribe, right? And we all know that we got to take care of ourselves and all that stuff, but I think it's worth outlining some things that we are all very familiar with as box owners that we do that are not necessarily healthy for us mentally, but also not necessarily like good for us, whether it be physically, health, just general health, and how that dovetails into like, is it making me the best version of myself for all the people that need my help? So I'll let you go, Jay. Yeah.
Well, specifically, Todd recommended a book about 4 to 6 weeks ago, and I just took it out of the library. It's called Digital Minimalism. And this is a conversation that Todd, we've talked about this for like 5 years. We went through a period of time where we reorganized our phone. And, certainly our phones in general, when you read this book, were not meant to be what they are today. They were basically phones with music on them. And then somewhere along the line, there was a sharp turn that turned into a social media device. But I think in general, whether a box owner, a member, a coach is listening to this, what percentage, Todd, struggles with this?
You mean struggles with just time on their devices?
I mean, yeah. I mean, based on the book, we could call it's truly an addiction.
Yeah, I mean, go anywhere in public. I know that's hard nowadays, and look around to see.
Well, go to either of your boxes.
Yeah, right. And look around and see how many people are like just actually present where they're at, or whether they're filling their time with their phone.
You know who I was really impressed with was Jason Khalipa. We had him on the show, and I noticed 100% of the time, from the time we got on, I could tell he was on me. Like, it wasn't, I see other people that we've interviewed, people are doing other things, they're getting distracted. I don't know if he lives his AMRAP mentality, 24/7, but he certainly did on the show, and I was really impressed by it. But I think that goes to what you're saying. For me, the box used to be my favorite time, especially coaching. I used to tell people I love coaching because I cannot check my phone. Like, I know I can't be on my phone during this hour.
You know what's interesting? Well, I'm smiling now because you guys might be aware of this now with the Apple Watch. How many people?
I refuse to get one because of that reason.
I don't know. That's exactly. I was like, why do I need more notifications in my life?
Same here, but not only like do I see coaches coach and like stop mid teaching progression and check out their wrist, but also your athletes now. Like, how many of your athletes have you noticed in your gym that they're in the middle of their workout and like you can see something happen and they stop and start scrolling on their watch? It's like it's hard to get away from it. They've set it up to where we feel like we need it.
Well, it's impossible. Not like, even if you had the best intentions, if that thing vibrates on my wrist, how many people do you know that would have the will to not look?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm looking 1,000% of the time because I'm just like, oh shit! Like, I just can't. You can't not do it. It's a reflex.
But
yeah,
and 100% agreed. And I mean, and that's what they were talking about in the book. How and like you mentioned, Fern, earlier, Simon Sinek has a great, I don't know if it was a TED Talk or just on another interview show, where he's saying it's a dopamine hit. And I've realized it now, at least. Like, I've gotten to the point, and I don't know, what they say. It's like, what you have to do first, but I'm at least mentally aware. You're checking your phone, and I talk to myself like, dummy, you're checking your phone because you're bored, and you should and you realize it. But let's swing it to just, you guys are box owners. I've been there. It's hard to balance that, right? How many, like, if I said to you, Fern, you can't have Instagram, you can't have Facebook, one of the first things you're going to mention is, in addition to best hour stuff, like, hey, I need it.
So yes. So and that was the question I posed you because
Yeah.
Todd said he took the Instagram app off of his phone, and my first question was, well, how do you do Instagram posts? Now there are third-party apps that you do it, so now I'm quasi replacing one for another. So did I really eliminate it? And to some degree, you do want to interact, but you can't post from the web-based version of Instagram. And I'm pretty certain they did that on purpose.
Well, there's workarounds now as well, though. Like I said, for best hour, we use an app called Later. We use
Yeah.
Tailwind before. And there's, I think, immediately as I'm reading this, I'm like, I need to delete this app. And I'm like, okay, if we use Later, carousels are an issue or videos might be an issue. And I'm like, immediately then I'm like, I'm just making excuses of why I can't do this. And in addition, what I've learned personally is we get a lot of DMs for best hour stuff, especially, hey, can you talk about this topic, or I have questions? And it's hard to read. It's hard to write back to. When I sit down at a computer and treat it like an email, I get back to it in more depth, more thoroughly. And
is that why I respond to all of those and you don't?
You respond to the majority of the best hour ones, but with a handful I do, or some other ones. But it, and it forces you to, like Todd maybe will speak about, kind of designate specific times where you do this.
So on that note, I took Facebook off of my phone. I mean, like a really long time ago, and I'm about to do it with Instagram, and because I took it off Facebook because Facebook became flooded. It was nothing good. Like there was nothing good that came through on my Facebook feed. I was like, this is just terrible news and terrible stuff and terrible conversations and just nothing but negativity. And that's basically how Instagram is at this point too. Like there is no good news on Instagram at this point.
Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, and I've done this numerous times, it's like where you'll delete that app for a week or 10 days and then decide to install it again and log back in. And you'll literally scroll for the first 2 or 3 minutes and be like, I've missed nothing. Handful of pictures, nothing. You're not. I mean,
Tim Ferriss talked about that in 4 Hour Work Week, is that because everybody is so connected, you will not be removed from what is going on in the world because somebody else will tell you.
Yeah, and it's a good excuse to have a conversation, right? That's what he mentions that too.
Yeah.
I think worst case, if we're being honest, or maybe it's just me being honest, a lot of times you're scrolling through to like just goof on and like in your head laugh at people and like say like this is nonsense, and I'm like, that's worse. Like to me, that's like the ultimate, like you're just being an asshole. Me personally, like I'm being an asshole.
I would tell you this: if it was, I don't really understand the dynamic of how the people's sphere of connections gets so big, right? Like it's like most of us have like a couple thousand or a couple 100,000 friends, if you will, which is just an incredibly ironic term. But if it was just my close friends, it would be great. Like there would be nothing but like, making fun of each other and all that stuff. But like, let me ask you this. Well, how much do you think ads have to do with that? Like people now are paying to be in front of you because that affects it. So there's ads, and then there's basically the use of ads affects the algorithm, at which point certain things will show up more in my feed.
Well, then you realize even the people you like or care about are basically doing promotions. You're watching basically commercials. You're scrolling through to watch your commercials of your friends that are selling, Kill Cliff or Fit Aid or, CBD or whatever's going on. And yeah, and then in addition to that, you're scrolling through and you're seeing the paid ads on there. It's all just a lot of insanity. One thing you made me think of is during this quarantine, I've gotten on the phone way more often with people.
Just a call?
Yeah, I mean, I called you yesterday. I mean, we were talking a little bit about business stuff, but, that's real. Like, I think one thing that the quarantine has been good about is I've rekindled a few relationships, and I've, speak to you and Todd. What are you laughing at, Todd?
So all I can think about is
Your
the
exes.
ex-girlfriends that you want to reach out to. I'm hoping
No,
you're not rekindling any of that stuff.
no ex-girlfriends, no ex-girlfriends.
So on that note, like I did the same thing a couple weeks ago. It was like the first, I don't know, first 2 or 3 weeks of kind of the lockdown. And my buddy, who's a ER doctor that I went to the Naval Academy with, he's down in Texas, and he was off for like 6 days. And he called me every day at like 5 p.m. and we would FaceTime and we would drink together. Not together, but like he would call me. He was just like sitting out at his house. And we caught up every day for like 6 days, and it was fantastic. And we would talk for like an hour every day. It was great.
The first time you like rekindle something, it's a little stressful because you're like, this is going to be a long call, or how am I going to end it? And then after a while, like my buddy that I hadn't spoken to in a few years, the first couple of calls, you almost don't want to get on because you're like, oh, this is, and now I can be like, hey, I got to go. And like you did, like Fern's like, I'm getting in the shower. Like when it's your friends, you're like, okay, that's enough. I can go.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier. Like you have like distant cousins or aunt and uncles that you try to catch up with once in a while. Like, oh shit, I got to block my Sunday morning off to talk to these 3 people.
You either tell them everything or tell them nothing.
I tried to FaceTime you. I tried to FaceTime you in the shower, and you didn't want to. You're afraid of what a real man looks like.
I was just outdoors, and I was afraid it was gonna, be blurry, and I wanted crystal clear reception. So, let maybe we can each speak from our own position as box owners, because really this is a lot of who it's geared to. I lost my mind when I was a box owner when it came to social media. I was on every option that I could be: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever else there was. Way too much time, but in my head it was a necessity. In my head it was furthering the business. I remember at one point a doctor friend of mine, a woman, she said, she's a PhD, and she was like, Jay, you need a day off from social media. And I literally remember saying to her, like, you don't understand. I can't. I run a business. I cannot do that. That's crazy in retrospect.
There's a weird tension that exists there, because you do need it, right? Like I'm not really sure how.
Hold tight. Your business needs it.
That's what I'm referring to.
Need it.
No. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Like
Yeah.
you cannot not have social media presence for your business. So, but again, and again, we all are guilty of using the word need entirely inappropriately. Need is not like I need to check Instagram right now. No, you don't. Like almost never. Actually, always never.
Yeah, there's
no scenario where like you need to check Instagram. Like I need to eat food and drink water and like go home and see my wife. I don't need to check Instagram.
So let's role play it, just because I'm curious. So let's take any of us. Todd probably is the one that posts the least, if ever, on Instagram.
I'm a ghost. I'm on there hardly. Yeah.
Do you even check it regularly, like just to scroll?
Right now, currently, ever since I finished that book, I deleted off my phone and it's out. I haven't looked at it, and it's been whatever that is, six weeks or something like that.
So you haven't even looked at it.
Well, here's the good news, Todd. There's no more coronavirus. The economy's fantastic, and all the gyms are open. Yeah.
I haven't looked at it once, and there's not much that I'm sure that I've missed. Now you'll be, I've never had a Facebook account. And probably like 6 months after starting our gym Instagram account, I handed that off as well. So I've tried to stay away from that, and more so because I know my personality with it, that it's a slippery slope. That if I ever had Facebook, or was in charge of running the gym Instagram and all that kind of stuff, I would be so deep into it all the time that I'd never get out of it.
So you never had a Drive Fitness Facebook group or anything?
Not me personally. I've always handed that stuff off. So we have we have Facebook group pages and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, the only times that I've been interested in having that Facebook page would be like to be a part of those groups or to make announcements and do stuff like that. But I've handed it off and left it up to other people to do for me, just because I don't think the reward is worth the risk of me falling into that rabbit hole and giving away more of my time doing it.
So let's say this, and I'll, because Jay, you no longer do, but I think you still have a pretty good idea about this. What would you say on a daily basis is the required time to have adequate social media presence for a gym? Let's say a gym owner doesn't have the option to hand it off. How much time in a given day would you need to spend there?
Less than 30 minutes.
I was
Yeah,
going to say for sure less than an hour.
yeah, I can't imagine it's much more than 30. Like if you think about it, so say what's the rate that you want to post, once or twice a day?
I would say
You guys,
three on the high end.
I would say
three,
I was looking at it like, hey, we're trying to be efficient in that. So I would say one post a day. And that, keep in mind, doesn't necessarily have to be time on social media. You can use an app like Later, like we use. For example, for Best Hour, I set that days or
Yeah.
a week ahead of time, which is kind of social media, but at the same time, it's not wasted time. Like you're using it
There's
as
no
promotion.
feed. You can't get
Right.
outside
You're
information from that. I'm just pushing. Yeah.
correct. So assuming you're not even doing that, let's say if if I were trying to maximize this and I owned a box, I'd probably have, call it 7 o'clock at night. I would have had one picture from the day in the gym, or maybe an announcement, depending on what's going on. And then outside of using that time to post, I would just check my DMs to see if somebody was interested in joining. Is that similar to what you were going to say, Todd?
yeah, I mean that would be my guess. As I would assume that if your response for saying why you need it for your gym is to post and then to interact, if you put on your schedule twice a day for 15 minutes, one in the morning and one in the evening, where you're like, I'm going to take the next 15 minutes, maybe it's in the morning time or the evening, whichever one, I'm going to take 5 of those minutes to make my post. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes to do any responses or to engage with anybody, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the evening, 15 minutes, just to simply respond to DMs or to comment or like or whatever you need to, and then shut it down. I can't imagine that doesn't provide adequate time to do everything that you need. That's the beneficial portion of having that.
And I would go so far as to say this: if you blocked off an hour and a half a day, you could do that and knock out all the emails and you could break that into 2 45-minute sessions. So I could do 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes in the middle of the late afternoon, knock out an hour and a half of stuff that is social media / responding to emails, and you'd be good.
I was going to say that's the secondary piece of this, and I haven't gone. Todd finished the book. I'm just beginning it, but we typically think about this from a social media perspective, but emails and texts, I think that was one thing that opened my, and all of this has kind of been happening during the quarantine. You realize when you're so itching to get back to someone's text or phone call or email immediately, you're on everyone else's time. And I used to try to get back to everything by the end of the day, and I'm like, it's impossible because someone can email me right now. And does that mean I go back on? Like, so with what you're saying, and like you mentioned in Tim Ferriss's book, I've realized if I just batch it and do maybe 30 minutes, whatever I set up for that day, I get back to everything faster.
So much faster. We were talking about this before we got on, that it's like, even with social media and stuff gone, it's real easy to fall in the trap of looking at your text messages and looking at your emails repeatedly throughout the day. And I was saying that it's like, when I fall into that trap, say I'm about to coach a class or maybe take a class, if I check my email right before I'm about to go coach a class and I've got an important email, well, clearly I don't have time to respond to it. So number one, I've read it, and now that's kind of lingering over me as I coach class. So I'm thinking about that. And then number two, because it's not a new email, when I go back to my inbox, I'm going to look at the new stuff, and that's going to be now the priority. So this thing gets left behind. It's still kind of lingering there, but I dread getting back to it. So it just causes more problems than it's worth. Whereas if I wait and, like you said, batch, then it's like, all right, if I only look at my email when I know I have time to respond, even if it's kind of a critical thing or something that's going to take longer to respond to, then I can get it done and get it knocked out. Number one, it's not lingering over me. And number two, it doesn't run the risk of being lost because it was opened and not responded to,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, going back to like what we were talking about Instagram with the DMs, that was always an issue for me too. Like you see it come in or you even click on it and then you're like, now I'm worried that I'm not going to remember to get back to it. So maybe you mark it as unread. Maybe you tell them to email you. But I think one thing that people need to be aware of is like there's only so much like RAM, if you will, to use a computer analogy, in your head. Like if there's too many things going on at once, that's a problem.
Yeah, the bandwidth isn't there.
I was thinking as you were talking, Todd, like I remember, I mean, I'll be 42 next week. And you guys we would leave our houses, we would drive hours and not have anything to do. Like,
Yeah,
but
and it was fine.
It's hard to even remember
fine.
that. Like, it
It's
was only 12, maybe 15 years ago. Like, you'd be like, I got my favorite cassette and I'm going to listen to this on a road trip.
On repeat, nonstop. Yeah.
And you didn't have a GPS. You had to like sit down with
MapQuest it, print it out.
Yes.
Well, even before that, I remember my freshman year in college, I had a girlfriend in New Jersey and I was going to visit her over winter break. And my stepfather and I like looked at an atlas, and we wrote down the directions to get from Peekskill to like Morristown, New Jersey. Like it was like there was no GPS back then. There wasn't a MapQuest.
So as busy as we are, I was training a client this morning. He's like a real estate developer around here. He's like they own everything.
Were you wearing masks?
We were wearing full chem suits. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hazmat suits.
And so he walks in and he's a prototypical guy who runs a company like that. I mean, he's like busy, he's busy what we think is busy times 100.
Yeah.
So he walks in and he just picks up his phone and he shows me and he's like, that's the number of texts that I've gotten since I got out of my car and walked to the front door of this building. It was like 25. And between him walking from the front door to the front desk, which is a whopping 12 feet, he got 2 phone calls. And I was like, bro, you got to make some boundaries.
Well, I think he is. I mean, unless he's trying to respond to them like we were talking about during class, he's making boundaries by not responding. I think somewhere along the line, emails, the evolution became texts, and texts somehow got recognized as, hey, you need to respond right away.
Yeah, it's emergent. Yeah.
It's our feeling of that. It's not the like, and we set the tone for the other person too. If we're the person that responds immediately, then when that person doesn't respond immediately, you're like, what the hell's going on? Why isn't Jay getting back to me? If you're the person that doesn't respond immediately, automatically I assume, well, you probably are somebody that isn't tied to your phone like everybody else is. So I cut you some slack. So you create the boundaries through that, right? You set the expectation with me just by doing things the way that you do things.
Have you ever been in a scenario where like you and I are texting? I've probably been in with both of you, and like you need to do something, but you're in the middle of texting and you feel bad like putting your phone down.
Oh yeah, I feel that way too.
I never feel bad about cutting a text off thread with you.
With you. Everybody else.
Yeah, anybody else I feel terrible about it.
I mean, I feel like the closer you are, like with all of us, we'll be like, hey, gotta go, or or even like in the past, like don't respond to this. I'm just giving you some information. But it's the people that you're like outside of your main circle that you like feel the worst about, when really they're the ones that are least important. Or like you're spending time with your wife or your girlfriend and all of a sudden you're getting a text from someone that's insignificant and you're focused on that, not your significant other.
This is something that Jocko brings up in his book, Extreme Ownership, where I think everybody's probably heard the concept of discipline equals freedom. And this is, I've had it at different points in my, so the other thing we're talking about is I used to I turn off the notifications on my email. So it only shows me that I have email if I open up the email. And then I would have a reminder that would come on at like 9 a.m., 2, and then 7 p.m. I think was the previous like reminders. Is like, but I got away from it and I deviated from the plan, which is don't open your damn email. If it's an emergency, somebody will call you. So I think that's something you can look at, which is don't turn off the push notifications on your email, and then try to set a schedule. I'm not the best at schedules, but I'm getting better at it. And Todd, you and I talked about this a little bit the other day before we recorded. And this is one of the reasons that I started working with a VA, which if you haven't heard the podcast with Matt Albrizio from Forever Fierce, go back and listen to it. But one of the things, and I think I got this idea from Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Work Week as well, he actually didn't really organize his email inbox. He would have a VA that would aggregate all of the emails and give all of that information in one email. To be like, hey, you need to respond to these 7 things. And he wouldn't even send the email. He would respond in that thread, send it back to the VA, and the VA would respond to each one of those. So there's a lot of ways to work around this, and being able to just do more by doing less is something to try to figure out. It's like, okay, well, how do I condense this information and do it? Like, I only have because the other thing is the Parkinson's law, which is like, I will get work done in the amount of time allocated to it.
Oh, yeah.
That's Michael McAllis talks about that, which is if you only have a 45-minute window to get it done, my bet is that you work really fast.
There are days I know I've got a lot of emails coming in and I'm busy, I'm out, whatever. And I have this overwhelming stress on me. Like, it's just this, like, I don't know how to explain it, but just like an additional level of stress. Then I get home and literally in 20 minutes, I got everything done. And I'm like,
Done.
what the fuck was I stressed out about? Like,
Right.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it goes back to what you said, Todd. I think it's like, once you kind of feel like you're going to forget them, or you have some other emails, you like always, it doesn't leave you. So I think a good way to wrap this week, Fern, you just gave out some good tips. Todd, what would be like 2 or 3 of your best tips to preserve mental health when it comes to the phone and social media?
You've got to put boundaries on things. Number one, you've got to figure out what's really useful and needed. And if that thing is needed, is this the best way to accomplish that task? We were talking about that a little bit, to where it's like some people will justify Facebook for their ability to keep up with their nieces and nephews or something like that. And then you fall into the trap of going on Facebook and scrolling forever. Whereas probably a better solution to keep up with your nieces and nephews is to call them once a week or once every 2 weeks and FaceTime with them, right? So know what's actually needed, and then put boundaries on the things you decide to keep, and batch them the way that we've already talked about. It's like it was really easy to batch and keep those boundaries up during the quarantine, where it was like I was coming into the gym for about 2 hours a day, filming videos for what was coming up, running a Zoom class and stuff like that. And I found over the last 10 days since we've been open again, it's like my boundaries the margins of my boundaries started to push. I started checking my emails a lot more. I started checking my text messages and all of that stuff. And I could feel that anxiety and stress start creeping back up. So it was like last night was the night where I was like, wait a second, I got to get back to the same process that I had before all of this. And today's been the first day back at that, and it's already making me feel better. But it's like, I got to know when I'm doing what I'm doing and only focus on that, because otherwise I've just got too many things going on. And if I'm either trying to do them all at once or wondering which one I should be doing when, not much gets accomplished. And, I don't feel very good about it the entire time.
Do you guys recommend like actually scheduling it, putting in your calendar?
That's the only way I'll probably adhere to it. Like that.
So
that's me knowing me. Otherwise, I'll just free for all. And I'm the king of just fly by the seat of my pants in a lot of realms of my life. Like I know that about myself. So, and I hate structure. So I'm very hesitant to move towards structure because it makes me feel confined. And I don't know if that's because of the military or whatever, but I'm just like, no, like rules are stupid, right? Which most people have probably picked.
coming
Which
from
most
the guy
people
that,
have, most people have probably picked up on by listening to the podcast.
You just quoted "Discipline Equals Freedom" by
Yeah,
Chaka.
Rules are stupid.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a real struggle, right? Like I recognize that they have a tremendous amount of value, but I struggle to move there because sometimes it makes me feel confined. When in actuality, if you abide by them, it makes you 10 times more productive. And as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking about all the things that just over the last 2 weeks, probably the additional things that are more important, meaning like I'm spending less time on Facebook and Instagram and doing those things and hammering emails, and I'm spending more time doing things that actually add value to my circle, right? My members, my coaches, all of that stuff. Like, I don't know how many thank you cards or gift cards I've sent out in the past 2 weeks, but it's a lot, like in the
Mine,
mail.
mine's in the mail still. It's lost.
Yeah. And if it's not there by next week, just keep waiting. So,
I
but
think
stuff like that, where, where that, like, yes, a text is cool if you get it, but it's way more thoughtful if you write a note. I mean, the intent is there. I'd be like, hey, is it more thoughtful than just calling somebody? I don't know, but it does show that you took some time to do that. And I feel good doing it, and they feel good when they get it. And we have that interaction later when they're just like, hey, man, thanks for the card. That was really cool. Appreciate it.
I think especially in today's day and age, that goes a long way. Like people, I mean, you and I hopped on a call with that box a couple of weeks ago, and then we each got cards in the mail.
Mhm.
And you read it, and you're like, oh, that was nice. And you also read it, I would say, maybe not differently, but more thoroughly. Like you're reading it like it took more time than sending a text. I had an old client. She was like 80. She's still around doing CrossFit at Albany CrossFit. And she would always yell at me, like, I used to train her before CrossFit as, one-on-one, send cards. And I was like, Donna, you can email now. She's like, no, you still have to do the right thing and send the card when someone, does X, Y, or Z.
Do both, but do it on a schedule.
Yeah.
So I do that stuff on Mondays now. Like, it's part of my to-do list. Like, I get a list of, member birthdays, gym anniversaries, and like if I need to send referral thank yous or whatever, and I do it all on Monday, and I write them because that stuff, like, it just shows up in my inbox. I'm like, all right, cool, I'm going to do that. So, like, I think it's figuring out how to structure that stuff so that you're spending less time doing. You're just going to do it all very poorly. Like Todd was talking earlier about, like, hey, I read this email and then I didn't get back to it. Well, I would add to that because I do the exact same thing, but I also don't read the email thoroughly.
Right.
Like, I kind of read a sentence. I'm like, oh, that's something important. I'll get back to it later. And then my response is also like half-ass to the email that I halfway read. And that's happened to me many times when somebody's just like, hey, bro, did you read the email that I just sent you?
Well,
like, yeah, I responded. And they're like, yeah, but you responded and it didn't make any damn sense. And I'm like, that's totally my fault. I apologize.
let's be fair. Some people send really long emails, and the longer an email I've learned, like, if an email is just too long, I put it off. I get to it later. And then if someone's going to send a long email, the best thing they can do is like hit enter and give me, it's like we have short attention spans. Getting just a block of words and letters is overwhelming.
Make actual paragraphs.
But
Yeah.
as a box owner, one thing I really loved that North Naples CrossFit did was they would send a card to every drop-in that came in. And
That's
I can't
cool.
tell you how many times I would see those cards on social media tagging the gym. So if you're a box owner listening to this, something maybe you want to consider, just a thanks. It's especially people that, if you're in a town where people travel through a lot, it's a good way to make sure they always come to your box when they drop in. And $15 to $25 for a class is, probably about the biggest margin you can make as a box owner, getting someone into your gym. So certainly worth keeping them, happy. For the tip that I've learned, it was probably about 2 weeks ago. I realized, I was like, why am I so stressed out again? And I finished a bunch of books that I wanted to read and started like checking email when I would wake up in the morning rather than reading. And I realized the way that
no, dude.
and I realized the way I was starting my day really it was like even later in the afternoon. So for me, I get up, and I think one important thing is just don't check anything. Like, I don't keep my phone in my bedroom. I don't keep my computer in my bedroom. I just keep my Kindle. So as soon as I wake up, because I'm going to go to the bathroom, I can read a book.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I just recently moved my phone away from the table.
yeah,
I put it in the bathroom. I just drop it on the little charging station or whatever. But yeah, I'm a big fan of reading. I think we've talked about this before. Just like 10 pages in the morning is like the first thing that I do. Yeah, but yeah, checking email in the morning is the worst. Because like if there's something shitty in there, like your whole day is ruined.
Yeah, you just like, it's like an adrenaline. It's like, fight or flight goes right away, and your day doesn't recover.
Well, it's just I'm trying to be more aware of how it affects my interactions with other people. So if, like, for instance, like, I'm always the first one up in the house. So if I get up and the first thing I do is I read an email that aggravates me, let's not even say it's shitty. Let's just say it's something that's aggravating. Well, that's probably going to have, at least to some degree, an effect on how I interact with my 6-year-old when she walks in, because she's generally the second person up in the house. So am I going to be annoyed because of that email, and am I going to interact poorly with her or a member when I walk in the gym? So it's just like try to really
set the tone of your day.
Yeah, like try to really pay attention to that, because that stuff matters. And you could be the person that's always annoyed because you set your, like sabotage yourself in the morning, or you can be the person that people would love to be around because you've set boundaries and then add value to their lives.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone would say I love being around Fern, regardless of what time you wake up. But still,
I mean, I couldn't have been happier that you moved from Florida to Colorado, because Florida was too close.
Yeah.
I like how he, on the down low, also basically called Jess lazy. I get up early, then Logan gets up, then Chappie, and somewhere
That
around
is
noon,
definitely not happening. Like,
my
she
wife
definitely
gets
has the short end of the stick now, like being at home doing homeschooling, which neither one of us are trained to do. So no, she is 1000% taking the brunt of this during
is
this
she
time.
homeschooling Logan?
Dude, it's awful. Like,
Stop
it's just,
filming you and darts and get some footage of that.
that
That's where
was
the
homework.
magic is.
We created that rocket so that we could.
Did you really?
Yeah, she has this thing called I think it's a Kiwi box or something like that. My parents bought a subscription, so every month they send a little box, and it's got like a project that you build together. It's like all sorts of weird stuff, and that one was like you build that little air pump rocket, and
Well, that's cool.
then you saw the result of that.
I did. Well, I think that helps. I wish somebody would have recorded something like this, 15 years ago when I was going crazy with social media. But it's excited me and motivated me to make some changes today. Reading that book, talking to you guys about it. Probably going to move some apps off the phone, figure out if I can use them online, be a little better about batching, and certainly not get into my email first thing in the morning. Set a time. Like today, we woke up, had breakfast together, and it's like so much more peaceful.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, I hope that helped everybody. Mental health. And if you use some of the tips and tricks that Fern, Todd, and myself laid out, please let us know. But don't let us know on social media.
Write us a letter. Write us a letter.
Write us a letter about how awesome we are, and address it to me. So, all right, guys. Anything else to add about social media or mental health?
That's it.
Nailed it.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.